All right. Kia ora, everyone. Welcome. We are really, really excited to have Andy Wright with us today and Linda Knight. I'll begin with the karakia and do the introduction soon. So, karakia te matanga. Manakitia te nehui. Manakitia te ne ropu. Manakitia te ne whanau. Tai noa ki te ne kaupapa. Arahina nā korero, arahina nā patai, arahina nā ture nei, kia puta ai te maramatanga. Amine. Bless this meeting, bless this group, bless this family as we come together for this gathering. Guide the discussion, guide the questions, guide the intent so that we move on towards greater understanding. So welcome, everybody. We have with us Andy Wright here from the UK. He's been very kind. It's early in the morning over there to join us. So Andrew Wright is the chair of the Attachment Research Community Trust, ARC UK, which is a charitable trust, and it was set up in 2017 by educators, school leaders, psychologists, training organizations, and academics, with a mission for every school to be attachment and trauma aware. That's a really ambitious and fabulous goal to have. And Andrew's also been teaching, has teaching experience over 40 years. And he's also been in leadership positions across education for 20 of those years. So we've been really excited to connect with Andy to hear about what their journey has been, because we're trying to do something really similar here at Natina in terms of shifting the way schools in New Zealand, Aotearoa, operate, and how do we make them more trauma-informed, neuroscience-informed, more relational, and a non-punitive and more inclusive, really, for all our children with different needs. So exciting to have you here, Andy, today. And we also have Linda Knight, of course, our member, and our fabulous principal from Glenview School in Korero, also a NME-trained facilitator with us today. So Linda has actually made the introductions with Andy, and Linda, you can even talk about a bit, about your trip when you went over and got to see some of the stuff. It'll be really good to hear that as well. But we're gonna start off with Andy. Andy, do share a bit about yourself with us in terms of, your professional background, your personal background, whatever you wish to share with us in New Zealand here. And yeah, and then we're gonna get going with a little presentation from Andy. But before that, Linda, I'd love for you to share how you met Andy and how you got to know about Andy and the work he does as well. Okay, so on to
Yeah,
you,
sure.
Andy.
Yeah. So, Andy first or
Yeah,
me?
anyone, go for it.
I'll just jump in and say, hi everybody, good evening. So great to have Andy here. Just a couple of other things about Andy that I'm hoping that he will talk about is one is his work with the virtual school networks. So virtual schools are not what we would think of as virtual schools. So hopefully I'm sure we'll hear a bit more about that. And the National Association of Virtual School Head Teachers. Sorry, that's my dog in the background because the neighbour's coming to the door. And I just want to say also congratulations to Andy because he was recognised this year and earlier this month received his OBE from HRH Prince William
Amazing.
for his work with children in care experienced young people, and also the professionals working both within the virtual school network and alongside the network. Hey, Andy. So, yeah, so congratulations. It's great that this type of work is recognised by the state, by the Crown. Um, and so, yeah, so I met Andy. I think most of you know I had my sabbatical in term two this year. So prior to that, I was exploring schools that I might go and visit, schools and centres of education. And I came across the ARC website. And I think it was the video, Andy, one of those great videos that you guys have put together about trauma-informed schooling, that drew me to it. And so I just reached out randomly and emailed the chair, and said, can you recommend any places that I could visit? And
Oh,
Andy actually absolutely went above and beyond. And not only did he recommend a whole host of schools, including special schools, to visit, but he actually accompanied me on a number of those visits and was just an extraordinary host. So thank you to that. So yeah, so looking forward to hearing. We're hoping that we can learn something. All the people here and all the people that will be watching are all passionate about seeing a shift in the education sector in New Zealand, and particularly at government levels, policy levels. So I'm sure that we can learn much from you. So hand over to you.
Thank you very much. Good morning from the UK. Good evening to you guys in New Zealand. Um, Thank you for those kind words. Really, just a summary of my professional life. I trained as a PE teacher, as I say, over 40 years ago. 1979, I started teaching. And then I don't move around a lot in terms of schools. So I've only been in about 5 schools, but I stick at those jobs and those roles. And at the heart of everything I've done before I knew anything about restorative practice, trauma-informed, attachment-aware, it was about relationships. And that's been my driver all the way through. And all of the schools I've worked in have been challenging in its broadest sense for a whole host of reasons. And again, that fits the way that I like to work, because the answer is always yes. And there's always a good side to everybody, and we just got to find it. And that's really been the driver in my professional life. The virtual schools over here is the service that supports children in the care system. So it's not virtual as in online. The virtual bit is you're like a blanket across all the schools that you link with where your children are. So we have a team in our virtual schools that support those young people in their school settings. So it's really to fill any gaps and accelerate, but also to give that emotional support, whether it's directly or commissioning somebody to do that work. So the National Association of Virtual School Head Teachers, there's over 150 virtual heads in the UK, in England. There's a different model in Scotland. There's a different model again in Wales, and they're emerging now in Northern Ireland. So it's a range of different ways of doing this. The English version, basically, there is a virtual head, and then there's a team that works with them. And they are a bridge between education, health, social care, and to a large extent, the criminal justice element of the services. So that gives you a bit of a flavour of that type of role. My headship was in a secondary school, so that's a high school, so 11 to 16-year-olds. But again, lots of collaborative work there with other schools and other providers and other services. So again, a message that will keep coming out here is very outward looking in what I do, what I'm about, and I just try and connect people together, and that's part of what ARC is about. So I'll go on to a presentation now.
thank you.
Right. Just got to wait for my screen to just settle down, and I can slideshow them, which it won't do. Well, right. So when I do similar presentations to whatever gathering I have, I always start with this quote here, because there is a tension in the system, and it's probably the same in your schools as well, where children have to behave themselves, children have to get on with learning, children have to follow instructions, etc., etc. However, what this is about is taking that to a different level, because it's about being calm and purposeful. To do that, you need to have relationships, solid relationships, and everybody's got to feel safe, and that's both adults and young people. So I picked that out, and that's got the Art Timpson Award nomination, which is a national award that we give out annually, and we're going to give out this year's next month. Ofsted is obviously our inspection framework, and again, I'll refer to that again later in the presentation. Now, as Frian said, we set up in 2017. The reason we set up is that probably the curiosity that you're showing in coming together as a group is that we knew that our system wasn't quite right for all of our children. There were a number of our children that weren't being included in their education. I avoided the word excluded. I said they weren't being included because I think it's quite broad why young people aren't being included in education, and very individualized as well. The group of people that came together did represent the full system around education. Now, interestingly, where ARC is now, we're looking across the system for children and young people. And again, that's a slightly different focus, different lens. But in 2017, we had some virtual heads, some senior staff from schools, some people that worked in universities, educational psychologists, all came together, and we joined in with some trainers as well to set up the original charity. We had an idea of what we wanted to do, but the detail certainly wasn't there. So you can see how the detail is emerging now. We had our mission statement, as already been explained, but what's interesting about these bullet points here is, yes, we want to support all schools and all settings, but if you look down at the bottom two, it's about that national picture, and that's becoming increasingly important because you need a national voice in order to be able to get things moving and challenging the system a lot. So we're trying to create platforms, we're trying to create that voice, and we do that alongside and on behalf of. So and again, I'll come back to this. We have a series of conferences, that's a platform. We have a series of webinars, they're platforms. We do documentation, they're platforms, really to get the word out. But the voice, you need to be in partnership and working with and talking to civil servants and politicians. And again, position yourself, that's quite an interesting journey to go on. So I just wanted to give that context as well. Right at the beginning, just before the pandemic, the pandemic did get in the way a little bit of this, we raised a call to action, and we wanted really people to join in with that. So we made it as engaging as possible and semi-controversial, not too bad to push people away, but we wanted to include people, and I've got some detail there. The actual call to action was very based on evidence-based, so it's based on research. It was raising a concern about young people that were being excluded from their learning in more of an informal way, so internally. So you've been removed from your class to put somewhere else because your behaviour is distracting, quote, or you're not quite settled enough today to come and sit down here outside the head's office or wherever it may be. So that type of arrangement that we knew was happening. And then suspensions and permanent exclusions, and they are still going up in the UK. It's a massive, massive challenge at the moment, that. The other category is those that are sitting in their classroom and not making any trouble at all, getting on with their work apparently, but actually they're not, because they're not disturbing the lesson. They can become unnoticed, so we call that the hidden children. And they are probably physically present in the learning, but emotionally they're probably not. So there's that category of young people. There's been some work around the effects of the pandemic, but when we did a call to action, that was just before the pandemic, so we didn't know what was going to come out of that. But that certainly is something that needs to be considered. The workforce is a big challenge. Is this a priority? You know, there are a million and one other priorities. Why do I have to spend time doing trauma-informed approaches, etc.? Very hard for the system to recognise good practice, because there tends to be a negative slant towards people not doing it right, and therefore you get the finger of blame pointed in that direction. Again, not very helpful. And then the role of the virtual head has been extended 2 or 3 times. So originally it was for children in care, supporting children in care. It's gone now to support children with a social worker, so really all vulnerable learners. And this last year it was kinship care as well. And again, I think that's applicable for you guys, some of the arrangements you've got over in your country. So that there were some of the concerns around the call to action. The other consideration, and again you probably can reflect on this, is these are just some of the terms that are floating around in the system referring to this work. So we've got to push on mental health first aiders in the country. So every school will have 1, 2, 3 mental health first aiders. Tick, I've done that. Oh, we're part of the local thing for nurture and resilience. Tick, I've done that. But and then, oh, public health, they're doing restorative practice. Oh, so-and-so is doing this, so-and-so is doing that. So we end up with a bit of a mishmash approach. And therefore, my question is that complementary? Is that creating gaps? And I think it probably is creating a bit of confusion. So we need that. And I apologise, there's a typo on the last two bullet points there, but the penultimate ones anyway. But at the relationships part of it is at the heart of all this. So that's the most important thing, and that reinforces what I said right at the beginning. The call to action, these are the summary of the bullet points that are in this call to action, but basically it is about training. So trauma informed was removed from the initial teacher training framework. So we've done a little bit of work around that. I'll come back to that in a minute. But right through the system as well, we've got national professional qualifications for all levels of teachers, from the strategic leaders right down to the classroom teachers. So again, it's putting it in there. And then the last 2 points are around the inspection frameworks. So we've got 2 inspection frameworks that lean into education. So there's a schools education inspection framework, and there's a social care one. The social care inspects virtual schools. So it looks at the education of the children in the care system. But the two don't talk to each other at all. Now, it's interesting, with the new government, they are looking at the schools inspection framework, and they're going to look at a scorecard approach, which I think will change the interpretation of some of the work that goes on in school. So that was our springboard. We launched that in the House of Commons, really a symbolic launch, but it got us moving. And what we wanted to do then was to start to connect people together. So there's schools, organisations. We want to look at a national strategy, so it was informed, and we wanted to get that real solid understanding of relational based approach. So that's what came out of the call to action. So you can see that starting from a charity where we wanted to support schools, we're recognising that schools were one part of a really connected or not connected jigsaw of system that we needed to pull together. So on that journey from call to action, we approached and were approached by a number of organisations. These are some of them, but I'll pull out some of them just to show how when you get the train moving, you can start to attract other people or engage with other people. So we've got the Department for Education. When we invited colleagues from there, I thought they'd just come and listen, but they've contributed quite a lot. They can't say anything that is going to say you must do this, you must do that, but they say they can give you examples of some good practice that's happening across the country somewhere. So that's been quite powerful. We've got the Association of Directors of Children's Services, again a key player from local authorities, because obviously that's children and social care working together. So that's really important. There's 2 professional organisations for head teachers in the UK. So there's the Association of School and College Leaders, which I sit on as representative for the virtual schools, and that's 25,000, mainly secondary and college leaders they are. So that's quite an influential group. And the National Association of Head Teachers. So again, that's mainly primary colleagues, and a slightly different organisation from our school. So you've got that strategic leadership part of it, and then you've got a number of charities that are in this space, including Adoption UK, Nurture UK, etc. So that is a really representative group that's really important to start to do. And again, as you're developing something, it's a case that you've got to build up your content before you can engage with those conversations. Challenges now, here and now, for the UK is engagement with schools, engagement with education. So there are major concerns around young people not attending school. I think we've got about 20% persistent absences currently nationally. So why is that happening, and what can we do about it? One solution that's been pushed very hard is let's find the parents and let's take them to court, etc. So that's been quite an interesting topic of discussion. Suspensions and exclusions keep going up and up and up. I think they've gone up something like 400% since the pandemic, massively. The SEND system, special education needs and disability, is very much creaking across it's overspending everywhere, and it's not delivering in most places. And there's no finger of blame there. It really needs a complete overhaul, but it's part of this jigsaw. Funding is an issue right across the piece, as for every part of the UK. So that's quite a challenge. Support systems, there's been many that have been stripped bare or have disappeared. So to find solutions, that's the onus has been put on schools to find those solutions. So that's a stress and a strain and attention. Recruitment and retention of teaching staff and the workforce in schools is really a challenge for our school leaders. And part of that, the cited why am I leaving teaching, why am I leaving working in a school, is behaviours in its broadest sense. So there's a need there. And then there's always the pressure of academic outcomes. So you've got quite a strong perfect storm there. So what have we done to develop from an ARCS perspective? And I'll give some, because we try and create some solutions, and solutions working with people. From our point of view, we're trying to give some of the tools and some of the support systems to pull people together to get to know where they're actually at and where they need to go. So, for example, the audit tool, we've integrated as part of the school improvement cycle, so they can analyse where they're at exactly at that particular time, and out of that will become a development plan. Those are both tasks that a school leadership team will always do annually. So creating this tool electronically, digitally, they can refer to it, they can fill it in at their own leisure, as it were, and build on it. So it becomes easier to do. The matrix is quite a clever tool, because that is historical, and also it allows all of the school team to access it and put in any developmental stuff they want to. So that's quite good. So we've built up a range of things there, and there's other systems. And again, I'll explain some in the following slides. I put this slide together here because this is about connecting people. So in the West Midlands region of England, which is where I operated throughout my professional life, and I was a virtual head in two areas, one in Birmingham, one in Dudley. There's 14 virtual schools, 14 local authorities in that area. And we recognise that of our children in care, around about 40% of the children in care to each of those individual virtual schools actually resided in another local authorities area. So they were being educated there. So how do you guarantee, how can you support out of area their education? So we came together as 14 local authorities, and that wasn't just virtual schools, it was directors, it was assistant directors, it was education psychologists, the whole system. And we thrashed out what we wanted to do, what was our framework that we wanted to offer. So we agreed at the bottom there, you've got a pathway, which is the ARC pathway, going from a bronze standard through to a gold standard. And then you could become a learning hub if you were really outward looking. To support that, we're using the ARC audit tool and the ARC matrix tool. And to reflect from that, there's a training arm, which is the EPS box further up. And that's the Educational Psychology Service. Doesn't necessarily mean that that's what who the trainers are, because it's the commercial ones as well, working with the virtual school. So we've knitted the system together in order to make sure we've got a framework. So that approach is been adopted by the 14 virtual schools. And I would have to say the majority of virtual schools in the country follow a similar sort of pattern. The detail is the bit that's different. That's also with the training and what is added to that offer. Moving forward, these are a couple of schools in that we've come across that we've been working with, and these are direct quotes from their Ofsted inspection that are recent. So I refer to the inspection framework. We are now starting to see that inspectors are recognising quality relationships and the impact of it. And these are really powerful. Both of these are secondary schools, both of these two. one of which Linda's visited. But it really, all the way through the report, it was referring to the relationships and what a special place that they were. So the other work that we've done, and again, this is about influencing. So remember the slide I talked about all those different terminology. So we work together, and it's no coincidence that we've worked together. On the top of the booklet, it's got ARC on there, it's got the National Association of Virtual School Heads, it's got Adoption UK, it's got Nurture UK. There's messaging in that, and the messaging for this document is that all of these approaches is about relational based approaches. So that's what we've put in this document, and you can have this. It's free to download off the website, and I would recommend it. And it's a really short, concise overview, and it helps everybody understand what we're doing. And one of the things when I share this professionally with school leaders and other professionals, I emphasize this is not an easy cop-out approach. This is a very highly skilled and integrated approach to work that takes a lot of support, attention, development, and you never stand still in it. You've got to do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and keep revisiting how it fits in. And I emphasize that all the time. The rewards are massive though, because you get the young people totally engaged. Off my soapbox now on that one. Right, so on this bit now, our annual conference is in November. We aspired to have a relational summit alongside at the same venue, and the reason I kept this on is because we're going to do it in a slightly different way now. But that little thing called the election got in the way of this, because the guys we were warming up in the last government obviously disappeared on July the 4th when the election was called. So we had to start again, and with the new people that are in post, the new ministers, it's too early in their tenure. So what we're doing now is, rather than we've built up a momentum on this. So we're going to link with an all-party political group, which basically they focus on some work, and it's about restorative work. That's going to be our hook, and we're developing this as a document now. And we'll work through that APPG group, and then from that APPG group, we'll get it out to every MP. And so we're working from within. So it's a different strategy from having a big event, and it takes a lot more work and it takes a little bit longer to get there. But the imagery here is quite interesting on that, because you've got the jigsaw bit and words shining through the piece that's been lifted. That is because that's what it is in the system, because the jigsaw is the children and the young people is the full jigsaw that are very happy, but the pieces that aren't in place is we're not connecting it together yet. And I would suggest that's probably the case with you guys as well. So other things to help people move along. So these are just a flavour. So we do a series of webinars, and in those webinars I mentioned the Art Timpson Award winners. So John Timpson is a business leader in this country. He's got a chains of shops. His background, him and his wife fostered, I think, over 60, 70 young people, one of which they've adopted. Multimillionaire family, really quality. Their company is an upside down model. So the shop manager manages within the confines of that setting, but he'll have a freedom to make the decisions there and then. And also they're very proactive in recruiting people that have had prison sentences. So it's a really powerful employer, and wonderful people. So as our patron, Sir John, it supports the awards. So our award winners, or those that are nominated, we invite to become learning hubs. And learning hubs then put on 3 events per year, whether it's 2 webinars and 1 face-to-face, or 2 face-to-face and 1 webinar. So we're actually getting the word out in the local area. So we've become local and more regional. Learning forums we've had. So Linda's mentioned on here. So Linda's performed at a couple of those, at one in the West Midlands, and met people up in Liverpool as well. And that's an example of it, because there's different people that's come into an area. or I've got an approach that I think is worth sharing, so we do that. And then the national group I think is really, really important because it keeps it going. So the bottom one there is we've got a trauma-informed and attachment-aware schools national group. It's a strategy group that meet on a termly basis. All those logos that I showed you are represented on that meeting. Every time we meet, we have 2 or 3 people presenting about the work they're doing. So, for example, we've had the London Violence Reduction Partnership, which has come out of the Police and Crime Commissioner role. They're concerned around serious juvenile crime. They've developed an approach there, which I'll tell you about in a minute. So we shared that as a national thing because there's things for people to learn from there. The other 2 groups that are cited on there, obviously we're very embedded in research. So we have a group that works with the universities around the research part of it. And the educational psychologists, absolutely crucial group because they are looking at policy and practice and processes. So they keep an eye on all our tools. So again, it's that national bit. Right. This is the 2 examples just to pull some of those other strands together. So APPG. So there's a paper that comes out of that. This is one around restorative practice. And I think that's worth a reflection on. That what's called for in there is very, very similar to our call to action, but it goes broader across the system. And we hadn't even met each other. Now, on the back of meeting with the Restorative Justice Council colleagues, they're at our conference this year, and I've got to their conference to talk. So it's building up that connections. The inclusion charter I just mentioned with the VRP, that's for every school in London, and that work is being rolled out. And again, ARC now are becoming a key partner in that because we are trying to be alongside of virtual schools and the VRP in that part of the country, that region. And then the right-hand side, the SSAT is another national group, a charity group, and they had a children's charter which talks about belonging, which talks about restorative, which talks about trauma-informed. So there's a lot of people in this space, and what ARC have tried to position is how we can pull those together. So we're not necessarily challenging each other, we're actually complementing each other, and that's really powerful. Mentioned before about the ITT core content framework, so that the HM research group worked on this, and again this document is available on the ARC website. You're more than welcome to have that as well. And then we rolled it out at about 10 national conferences and just challenged the system. As a result of that challenge now, we can't necessarily get it in the ITT framework at the moment, have trauma-informed in there, but we're influencing the providers, so they are actually applying it, and we're connecting them up with some of the local delivery models. So we've got there in the end, but we've had to do it through the back door, if you like. So, but really, we want to get it within the framework. This is our big messaging thing. So we try and make sure we've got national or international speakers here at our conference. We've got over 500 delegates coming to this. In the pandemic, we went online. We did it the same as we're doing now. The year after that, we did a hybrid model, which was really expensive and hard work. So we've gone back to purely face-to-face, but we've gone to a bigger venue to get more people in. When we were online, we managed to go international, and we've beamed in people from different parts of the world. So that was good. We've continued with that because people have done what I'm doing today is looked through the time zone and tried to beam in that way. But this particular one is very much UK based. So some of these people, names you will be familiar with, and I know Linda's certainly familiar with Paul Dix. So Marie Gentles worked with some of our schools and was on BBC television with an approach. And coincidentally, she was working with some of the schools I was working with at the time in Dudley when I was the virtual head there. Belinda Hopkins is from restorative practice. So going back to the terminology, the language again. So a different approach, a different language, but the same approach. And Ellie Costello is a parent who has started up her own charity, and is really about school refusers and some of the young people in that, some of the reasons around that. And Dame Florella Benjamin is care experienced herself and has done a lot of work around this work. So then we've got a panel, and again, messaging is important here. So we've got Jim Simon, who's the CEO of the Restorative Justice Council. We've got Arti Sharma, who's the CEO of Nurture UK. We've got Sue Johnson, who's the chair of the National Association of Virtual School Heads. And we've got Evelyn Ford, MBE, who is the past president of the Association of School and College Leaders. That is a strong panel, and that is a way of getting messaging out there for the delegates that are there. That's a short overview of the world of ARC, and hopefully that stimulated some thoughts and some questions and some queries about why we've done it, what's been the impact of it, and what are we doing next, those sorts of things. And I'm more than happy to have that general discussion now. So thank you for listening.
Amazing. Gosh, that is so much that you've done. It makes me think we are just at the beginning and there is so much to do. I think I am blown away with the partnerships you've managed to build, Andy. And I think that is exactly what we're trying to do. I'm really hopeful because in our context, even today, I keep coming across, one new person, one new name who's, like you say, working towards the same end, using different terminology maybe. And I'm just realizing there's so much happening in little individual spaces, so to speak, by individual people or, smaller groups or individual schools. And I think bringing that together, pulling that together, like you say, is what we're really keen to do so that we can eventually make some systemic sort of changes. Can I ask one very basic question? And that is, how have you done this? Now, you've done it as a group of professionals. Have you done it within your professional roles, or have you done it outside your professional roles as volunteers? And the reason why I ask is right now, what we are doing in this space is we're all volunteers. So we're doing most of this work outside our professional role. It's not a paid job role for us. For me, particularly as a parent, this is completely voluntary, and sort of doing it in my own time. How do you sustain something like that moving forward? How do you grow something? And where did you manage to get your resourcing funding? So that's something I'm really interested in. And also, did you have, because I see you've got, I guess one point of difference is you've got a whole lot of professionals, but we've got professionals and also wider community. We've got some parents, families, some community leaders, NGOs, not-for-profit sort of, spaces interested as well. So how have you gone about it, and what's that look like for you?
I'm such a wonderful person to be with. That's what happened. No, right. So we're all volunteers, right? So that's the first thing. So trustees are volunteering their time. And I respect that. Now, from a personal point of view, retiring last year has given ARC more capacity, and I'm more than willing to do. So it's been an absolute privilege this last 18 months or so to go lots of different places. So capacity is a real issue, and how you can create that capacity. Before that, in employment, there's a tension there because I can't leave my job that I've been paid for to go and visit a school somewhere. So that is a real consideration. So I think you're hitting a few nails on the head there. We're in a position now where because we've grown, we've just this last year, we're 6 months into it, we've taken on our first paid employee. All right, so we've got a director of partnerships now. That's taken us from 2017 to 2023 to get to that position, right? So and part of that journey is about financial, but part of that journey is about your offer. So what are you actually offering, and do I want to be part of that? So it's that persuasion part.
Yeah.
In terms of the financial, making it sustainable, we are a membership organisation. Okay. So we invite people to be members and schools to be members, and there's a cost to that. Now, again, that membership costing has evolved as we've grown and developed. And one of our main way of doing this is working with virtual schools, and they block book for all of their schools, which make it more cost effective for them and more cost effective for us. So we've got 5 tiers of membership, ranging from individual people and individual schools through to that block booking. And again, if we got into a position where every local authority had a block booking, we could reduce the cost per local authority. And we're on that journey now, but we're not there yet. So that's quite important. The second funding stream, and these are harder to access, are partnership grant applications. Not just purely for ARC, but it's with somebody to do some focused work, and that could be a small amount of money for ARC, and a big amount of money for a researcher or for a trainer or whatever it may be. So there's some possible funding streams there. And then the third funding stream, although we don't use this as a funding stream, is your events. So you could make that an income stream. We don't set out to make a profit from any of our events. What we do is that's our messaging platform, and that's been really important. So as long as we don't lose money, we're quite happy to break even. And then the last one is we are increasingly approaching businesses as partners. I don't call them sponsors, I call them business partners. And I've gone to people that are aligned to this work, and I said, right, how would you like to be a partner with us? What does that look like? So I'm listening to them, but I'm using their brand names for some of the events. So for example, the Arc Timpson Awards, we're going regional this year. We're doing 4 regional conferences across England, and for each of the 5 regions, because the Midlands is the 5th region, and we do our annual conference in the Midlands. So the 5 regions will have Arc Timpson Awards given out regionally, as opposed to just at an annual event. So I've gone out for sponsors there. So it doesn't cost us anything, and that cost of that is being picked up by a business partner, and they will get the publicity then at those events. So it's quite cheap for them, but it's not costing us anything. So our philosophy is not to make money particularly. It's really to get more out there. In terms of the trustees, some can give more time than others, but we started off with people that were interested and supportive of this. We're now at the stage where we're doing a skills audit, and we're looking to see if there are any gaps in our skill set across the board of trustees. And then the last criteria is we want to make sure we're covering all of the country, and so we're looking geographically where our trustees are living and can support that part of the country. So we can link that. And in doing that work, we've identified that we don't have the capacity to do all the work that we want to do now. So we've just launched ARC Ambassadors, and ARC Ambassadors will be volunteers that have got a few hours, and they can support local events, or they might want to review some research and put that on the website, or they might want to go and give a talk on school leadership using this approach somewhere. So and there's a number of people I've come across that really want to contribute but can't commit to a long-term bit. So there's a range of different things there, and you can see they're all at different parts of the journey. And in a year's time, I'll be telling you 2 or 3 other different things as well. And that's the nature of the beast. You've got to keep moving to gather momentum, really.
Nice. That is amazing. I think when you put it so neatly and sort of stacked up like that, it makes so much sense. Yeah, we do have volunteers, and what I found is the inconsistency. So I think somehow trying to organize things so that it's more consistent, and then we've got that ongoing support, even if it's really tiny. I think that might be something to look at. And I love the concept of business partners, because I think the point of difference, we are really trying to make sure we are also out in the community, so it's not just schools and education alone. And a big reason why I think it's really important is often educators feel like they're the ones having to do everything and they're the ones carrying all the load. And so it's really good actually to have the community supporting, and being on the same page, so to speak. Yeah, so I think that's a fabulous idea. Thank you for that. That's fabulous. Linda, did you have any questions?
Yeah, Andy, I'm interested in that whole sort of political parliamentary space.
Mm,
So you
yes.
talked about the launching the call to action in the House of Commons. So interested in
Yeah.
how you affected, how you got that opportunity. Also that the cross-party committee on restorative practice, how you sort of got your foot in the door there. And I know, Priyan, you asked recently, I think it was in the chat with Fiona, that about affecting legislative
Mm,
change. So
yes.
have you seen any sort of change in legislation that affects schools to encourage inclusion, relational practices, etc.?
Right. So the politicians, it's relationships again. And basically you have to approach people and be prepared to be pushed back a number of times, be prepared to be ignored. But because I always use this phrase, it's probably not politically correct, but I'm very deaf, blind, and stupid when I get the word no pushed in my direction because I don't hear it. So I
Yeah.
just go back. If they get a bit more assertive, then I might hear it then. But it is about being resilient to that and just going
Mm,
back. It's identified who your friends are in that political arena because there will be people that are actually active in there and go there first. And so in our world, what got us into that launch bit was Edward Timpson. So Edward Timpson
mm,
is the son of Sir John
mm,
Timpson, who was an MP at the time. Very, very proactive and very supportive of this. Did the exclusions report in the UK. So he understood the system. Interestingly, his brother James Timpson, who was heading up the Timpson company, has been invited to join on the criminal justice side, so the youth reform side. So we've got an ally in there as well. So it's basically making the most of those allies, but then it is developing that. So you widen that net, and again, not just using your contacts. It's about weaving into those other organisations. So the Restorative Justice Council is a good example of that because they are politically driven. So they are connected directly to the Home Office element of the political system in the UK. So they've already got a connection there. So me aligning to their CEO and do some joint work has allowed more wider conversations there. And then the world of universities and research again has put stuff in. And that TIAS group, we're just in a position now where we are reviewing our political connections with a new government because the amount of new MPs that have come into this administration is massive, absolutely massive. So there's a lot of on the job learning. And so rather than trying to hit them all up with the same people, we're trying to look about who are you talking to? Who are you talking to? This is what we're saying. So we're having that collective conversation. I think that's really important. In terms of legislation, it's very early days. The message that's coming back out very strongly around the world of education and health and social care, it's going to take a long time to fix and sort this mess out. And that's been a consistent message. However, there is a lot of listening going on. So I've met with colleagues from the DfE, and they're not talking to each other for a start. They're doing their little area of work, but so I started saying, well, if I spoke to you, I'd say this, this, and this. I spoke to you, say this, this, and this. Actually, they're joined together. You need now to join together. So I'm taking the horse to water and all that. I went to a conference last week, and there was colleagues there at the table I was sitting at by coincidence from the Home Office. So I managed to stir the pot a bit there, and I've got them to come into our conference. And again, the messaging from that conference will be really, really, really strong. So working within civil servants, I think, is really important because what I learned from those two meetings is that the ministers are asking for more information about what's happening and what's working and how could it work. Our weakness in all of this, and I think this is global, is the impact of this on academic outcomes, right? Because the most of the research doesn't conclude around academic outcomes. Yeah. So those that want to doom and gloom it turn around and say, well, we've done this for 25 million years and we've had all these outcomes and we're brilliant, and you're coming with this new fad and it's never going to work because you're allowing bad behavior, and that's going to destroy the outcomes of everybody else. So we do need that research needs firming up, and that's a weakness. So I think we've got to generate and develop our discussions and our arguments in a slightly different way. And that slide I put on for the challenges about disengagement of young people, I think you can't argue with. So politically, I think that's where we get in there. So at the moment, we are not including a large percentage of our children in education. So therefore, we've got to do something different, because the old system is not encouraging this, and the outcomes then will come. But I'm recognising our Achilles heel there is the academic outcomes.
That makes sense. And I think the direction that we are currently headed in, it is all about the academic outcomes and achievement and attendance, and so yeah. And I think sometimes you have to kind of tailor the language to suit the political climate to get a foot into the door, so to speak.
Yeah, I just reflecting. I met with the Chief Inspector of Ofsted the week before last as part of the ASCL Council, which I'm on, and everybody else was a school leader, and I'm a bod, because I'm unique in that group, and most groups actually. But and it referred to children in care quite a few times, so I used that as my way in, and I said, do you realise that the school inspection framework doesn't apply to virtual schools because they're in the social care framework, and both are concerned with education, but they don't talk to each other, don't reflect at each other. Is the new frameworks going to do that? So that was the gist of my question. Now, the reason I asked that question, because I invited him to the summit, he didn't reply to me. So I'm Andy Wright. You've now met me. So that was my first message, and I'm not going away. And the second message was for the rest of that group, because they were really strong school leaders that represent that ASCL group, those 25,000 members. They didn't realise that there was two inspection frameworks that were linked to education. They do now, because they've asked that question. So it is about finding the opportunities, and that being an example of finding opportunities to raise that awareness of what's going on and what potentially could go on. I've got another reflection for you to think, and you can't answer this because you've got to talk about it and think it through. But I met with Paul Dix's company yesterday. The reason I know Paul Dix, well, we worked together probably about 10, 15 years ago. We've kept in touch ever since. Great guy, he's got a great offer there, and he's really, really interested, because a lot of his offer now is basically virtual, so he can give it wherever. And he's going over to I think Thailand, to a conference over there to start to share that in that part of the world. We got on then to talk about doing this today, and I think there's a potential here to have a further conversation and thoughts about whether ARC could be part of your network, or you could be part of our network, or what that looks like. And equally, when adults change, so Paul Dix's crew, of having that as part of the offer there as well, because he's very keen to make that happen. Now, again, the power of that is international is a lot stronger than local. And so there's potential there, and I'm recognizing that you've got 1,000,001 things you want to do and 1,000,001 questions to answer, etc. But I think, look at the journey we've been on since 2017. If we get the infrastructure right, then we can motor and we can do whatever we want to do. It might be that it's not the right thing for you as well. So equally, that's fine as well. The last bit that I think you need to know as well is that in order to make the charity work, and which is why we need the income, we have a company that do our administrative support, absolutely everything. So there's a cost there.
You
so
like
all
that,
the stuff that yeah. So yeah. So, but again, it's getting yourself in that position without however your funding model is going to be. We started off with a grant from the Timpson Foundation, around Timpson Trust. So that got us going. Now, in my financial management, we've never spent that because we saved that in our reserves. So we're nowhere self-sufficient in order as a business. But I think it's that business side of it that you've got to talk through as well as you're developing what you're going to do, because otherwise you're going to be relying on goodwill and individuals rather than the system. Now we're not quite there to be the full system, but we're well on the way on that journey. But we've still got some key people that are driving this. So rather than it being ARC that's driving it, and I think it'll probably take another 2 years to get ARC as the vehicle rather than individuals in the product, really.
Nice. That does make so much sense. And if I were to be hired as an admin, I would probably be fired the next day. But right now, this is it. No, look, this is so helpful, honestly, Andy. For me, it's just, I just wanted to get all the nitty-gritties. How do I keep going, keep things moving? And there is so we're quite clear. We've sort of got some, strategic outcomes that we've sort of looked at, where we've sort of worked on that, because we had 2 years before we formally established to talk about what we want to do and how we want to go about things. So we've got some of that. I think it's the doing now that we've got to get going. One of the things in terms of, I guess, the business side, like you said, is we are keen to offer workshops and, professional learning opportunities. And I thought that could be one of our income sources that then helps with, other bits and pieces like admin and some of the resource development that we could be looking at doing. And partnerships, yes, we're sort of slowly working at it, but I think even with that, it's the time factor. But yeah, I wonder what, we've considered a face-to-face, in-person conference, and it's just logistically a lot for me to sort of, organize. So I wonder if something online would work, and if we did something online and keep it really, really reasonable, like you say, not try to make profit out of it, but it could still be one of the sources that allows us to do the work we want to do and keeps us financially sustainable. That's something we could possibly be looking at. So there's a few good ideas there. Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that. And yes, and we would absolutely love to continue being in touch and, explore what further opportunities are there for collaboration. Can I ask one other question in terms of school leadership? We keep talking over here that it's really important to get the school leaders here and sort of, get them on board, and then you can have the shift happen. What have you found, in terms of working with school leadership? What has worked well? What has, been effective in getting school leadership on board? Is there anything in particular that sort of, has really helped?
The odd kidnapping of school leaders have been quite helpful, and then interrogating them to make sure. But beside that one, it's really helping them to understand about the benefits of this. So working alongside virtual school heads, each virtual school head is developing a strategic approach, which is working in their local context, and that's really, really important. And so being a virtual head in Birmingham and in Dudley, both completely different beasts. Birmingham, really, really big, really complex. You needed a networked approach there, so we clustered the city up there. In Dudley, the agenda there was they needed to go on a journey of school improvement, and help on that journey, you needed to put some different ingredients into it. So we had different products in addition to trauma-informed approaches. So that using those as two examples. So if we go back to that slide that I showed about the West Midlands, so what we've has evolved from that. So you've got a framework. So there's basically identifying what you need, so that the audit part of it, looking at the training part of it. So the training model is different. So there's educational psychologists that are in-house, there's commission services that people buy in, but there's a training, and that training is linked to the identified need from the audit. So that training could be school leadership. That training could be whole school. That training could be weak members of staff buddying up with strong members of staff. It could be certain teams, right? So it depends on where you're at there. So you tailor make that training there. By doing that tailored approach, you then start to fit in with the journey that school's going on. And if you're fitting in with that journey, then it will persuade that school leader to take it on. Now, that is a lot of investment and a lot of knowledge of relationships, which is why it has to be localized. So on the other side of that coin is recognizing, and it goes back to my teaching days. I never seemed to notice bad behavior. It was just out of my sight all the time. As soon as I did things right, I noticed that, and I said that was brilliant, and thank you very much, etc., etc. So it's modeling the good stuff. So what can you do in your local area to celebrate the good practice that's going on, and using the language that even the doom and gloomers want to hear. So in those two Ofsted quotes they gave you there, they're both outstanding schools. So although that term's been dropped now, their outcomes are really, really quality. And outcomes is not just academic, it is attendance and it's suspensions and exclusions. So it's celebrating that. So you're noticing the things that are working, and by everybody wants to be noticed. Absolutely everybody, even the hardest nosed school leader wants to be recognised for doing a good job. So you just change the language of what you're recognising. And then that pathway part of it, the bronze, silver, gold. I want to be a gold school. So, and it doesn't cost anything. So a certificate, and it's the children in us. We like to get that certificate. So it's how you can manipulate, and that's not a nice word, but how can you help that school to be hooked in? The most powerful thing I've ever done, and I've basically heckled my CEOs of MATs that are kicking kids out left, right, and centre. And I'll give an example of one I work with in Dudley.
I'll just jump in there and explain what a MAT is. It's a multi-academy trust, which is basically a network of charter schools, cluster of charter schools.
Yeah, keep translating for me because I'll get into jargon world then. Sorry. Yeah. So they're out of the jurisdiction of the local authority. So then, so they can do what they want basically. The CEO wouldn't meet me. It took me 3 attempts to go and see them. When I got in there, I had 45 minutes of their monologue telling me what they were going to do in their school and how they did it. And whatever you're going to say, little man, go away. It was that type of conversation. So I just sat there and smiled. And then I invited them to the conference. They got to the conference and they came and they brought one of their senior team. And I didn't acknowledge them when they arrived, but at the first interval, by coincidence, I bumped into them. And the messaging that they'd received in that first session, they said to me, we need to do this. We need to start this process. Right. So I didn't have to say anything. My professional conversation with that MAT then changed immeasurably because they'd been modeled in a different way, and not by my voice, but by other people's voices and actions. Now that's the power of it. And that's what I'm saying about taking that holistic approach. If you've got these awareness raising events, these celebration events, you're starting to encourage other people to be inquisitive and want to be part of it. And that's how we've got got it moving. And even within what I would consider friends, there's that pushback is, why are you giving me more work? So I've got to make sure that it's not seen as more work. It is actually enhancing what they're already doing, and it's going to make it easier for them in the longer term. So it's finding all the wins and helping them to recognise those wins.
And do you think, just quickly, that shift in that Matt CEO was partly at the event, at the conference? It was about sharing stories. It was storytelling. Yeah, because that's Bruce Perry's always saying that's stories that change people and people change systems. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hey, Freon, we've come up over the hour. I wonder if we should open it up to the floor for questions.
Absolutely.
But I want to stop recording before that. Yeah.
No, absolutely. No, look, I think we've gone through our list of questions, Linda.
I've got some more, but I want to throw it over to other people.
No,
when we stop
absolutely.
recording.
Let's open it up. People, we're recording this and we're going to share it. If everybody's happy, I'm more than happy to sort of unpin us and then, open it up to all of you. If anybody's not comfortable being recorded, please let me know. I can pause the recording now. We all good? Okay, so let's just carry on the conversation. The floor is open. Anyone want to ask questions? Please go for it. Go for it, Tracy.
Kia ora, Andy. Thank you so much. Have you ever been to New Zealand? It's a really important question.
Well, the only reason I was nice to Linda so that I get an invite to go on holiday there. So it's on the list. It's on the list to visit.
Yes, you should come out. I mean, the awesome thing, besides the people and the beautiful scenery, is there's not that many of us. So I think sometimes when you're looking at things like this, the fact that New Zealand is as small as it is can be to our detriment sometimes, but it can be a really awesome environment to be in if we can sweep in everyone up with enthusiasm. So I taught for 3 years in the UK in the 90s in my OE, and I loved it. Absolutely loved it back then. But yeah, I was writing lots of notes down. I want you to know I'm studying this year, and I love how many research articles you have on your website, because I knew this was coming up. So I went to check out the website, and then I got into a rabbit hole, and I've used a lot of the readings are now in my study. So I just want to say a big thank you. How do you decide what goes onto the website? Like, what's that process?
It's really complicated. We just say yes. Basically, because the HE and research group are what they are, that they represent nationally that field. So if anybody's doing anything, part of the title is the community. And we want to pull people together. So like you've gone onto our website, that's exactly what it's there for. It's to hook people in. Now, interestingly, as a business model, we are debating about what's open website and what's members only website. So further down the road, we may have to make it more restricted. And again, it depends on the evolution part of it. But the other bit about research, I'll share with you as well. Our newsletter, which I send out every month, we feature books and research on there on purpose as a learning corner, so people are referenced to it, and any strategic work we try and put that in. So that inclusion charter, we featured that when that was launched last year. So it's really, I want people to come to us to say what's happening in this world. Here it is, and that's important. So the invitation is for you guys there. If you've got anything you want to share them, then send it over to me and I'll put it on. I'll include it.
That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, because I just thought it was great. I mean, that's one big thing in New Zealand. Like when I did my lit review at the beginning of the year, kind of diving in, and the current definitely took me for trauma-informed practice, took me to the United States with everything that's happening there. Then it took me over to the UK, and then which is a great thing. It took me to Australia, but sadly, we have a lot of work to do. You know, we're kind of like new to the game as such, so we have a lot of work. But we have people like Carly. You've done some good research on trauma-informed practice. Carly down there's got some good to read. So yeah, definitely, it's exciting. So I just want to thank you for your website. I hope it stays open access for a little while longer. I'll just have to go in and download everything. Thank you. And I hope, Andy, that you get to come to New Zealand. It's a beautiful country.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Karen, kia ora.
Kia ora, I'm going to have to go, but I just want to acknowledge that you have increased my curiosity, and I hadn't thought to go to the website, so I'm very grateful for that. But unexpectedly, you've given me a 101 lesson in growing a voluntary organisation, and that's been the most succinct and most useful presentation that I've attended. You know, you really did let us into your secrets, and that's so cool. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thanks,
Okay.
Karen. And absolutely agree with what you're saying, Karen. It's a 101.
I'll just say a quick hello. But yes, as some of you know, I've just begun this term as a first-time principal, so my head's a bit mush at the moment. I just really have turned up tonight to just absorb. Yeah, but I think I'm more excited for you, Freyan, for all the tips and tricks you might have learned or might learn from
Absolutely.
from this. But thank you, Andy, so much for giving up your time in your morning for us. Yeah, just really appreciate that we can connect with people like yourself from all over the world. Yeah,
It's my pleasure, and this is the start of a relationship, not just a one-off. So if there's anything you want to know, just fire emails over,
Thank you.
or come over to the country. I mean, just find out from Linda how you make that possible.
Absolutely.
maybe another 5 years on the job.
Yeah, very good.
No, thank you. Thank you so much. It's been so helpful, Andy. Really, really do appreciate it.
My pleasure. Have a good evening, all.
Thank you. I'll close us with a karakia since we opened with one, and then we can get going. Karakia whakamatunga. Kia whakairia te tapu, kia watia ai te ara. Kia turuki whakataha ai, kia turuki whakataha ai. Haumie, huie, taikie.
Thank you.
Restrictions are moved, so the pathway is clear to return to everyday activities. Thank you. Thank you very, very much.
Thanks, Andy.
Go well, everyone.